Dorian Price did not believe in birthdays anymore. Not since the last one Serena was alive to celebrate. The one where she sat across from him at Bell Harbor Restaurant, too weak to finish her slice of cake, but still smiling like she had all the time in the world. That was 3 years ago. She was gone 11 months after the diagnosis first came. So when his cousin Lionel called on the evening of Dorian's 37th birthday, with a story about a client, a river house renovation, and a meeting that couldn't wait, Dorian should have said no. He almost did. Then Lionel mentioned the number, and Dorian thought about Jovi's school fees and he put on his jacket. He walked into Bell Harbor expecting blueprints and a handshake. Instead, he found Kira Linton, Serena's best friend, sitting at the exact table where he had once dropped to one knee and changed his whole life. There was a small birthday cake, a worn wooden box, and an envelope in handwriting he would have recognized anywhere. Dorian stood frozen at the sight of it all, and that was when everything he had spent 3 years running from finally caught up with him. If this story already has your attention, go ahead and subscribe before we go any further. Every week we bring you stories like this one, real human and worth your time. Now let's get back to Dorian. Columbus in late October had a particular kind of quiet, the kind that settled into old neighborhoods like a second coat of paint, slow and permanent. On Merchant Street, where Dorian Price rented the bottom half of a narrow 2-story house, the oak trees had already dropped most of their leaves, and the gutters needed clearing again. He noticed things like that. Gutters, loose porch boards, a hinge that had been off by 3 degrees since spring. It was easier to notice other people's problems than to sit with his own. Dorian was 37 years old, broad-shouldered in the way that came from actual work rather than a gym membership. He ran a small carpentry and home repair business out of his truck. Nothing fancy, just quality work and a reputation built over 9 years of showing up on time and never cutting corners. His customers trusted him, his daughter adored him, and most mornings, that was enough to get him out of bed. He used to be the kind of man who filled a room. Not loudly, just warmly. He liked to cook big meals on Sunday, liked finding reasons to invite people over, liked turning ordinary evenings into something worth remembering. Serena used to say he could make a Tuesday feel like a celebration. That version of him had been quiet for 3 years. Serena Price had died in February from an illness that moved faster than any of the doctors had prepared them for. She was 34. She had been his wife for 6 years, his best friend for 9, and the person who laughed loudest at his worst jokes. After she was gone, Dorian kept the house, kept working, kept raising their daughter Jovi with the same steady hands he brought to everything else. He did not fall apart in any visible way. He simply stopped expecting anything from the days that weren't strictly necessary. Jovi was 8 now, bright and watchful with her mother's eyes and her father's habit of going quiet when something was bothering her. She had stopped asking about birthday parties 2 years ago. Not because she didn't want one, but because she had learned the way children learn things they shouldn't have to, that certain celebrations made her father unreachable for days afterward. Kira Linton had been Serena's closest friend since their freshman year of college. The kind of friendship that survived distance, bad boyfriends, cross-country moves, and everything in between. She had been at the wedding. She had been in the delivery room waiting area when Jovi was born. She had sat beside Serena's bed in those final weeks and held her hand through the nights when Dorian needed to sleep. After the funeral, Kira had stepped back. Not because she didn't care, but because she didn't know how to be present in a house that had been built around a person who was no longer in it. She sent things through Lionel, groceries after long work weeks, a new backpack for Jovi at the start of the school year, a card at Christmas with no return address. She never came to the door herself. Lionel Vance. Serena's cousin was the thread that kept everyone loosely connected. He stopped by Dorian's house every few weeks, watched football games, helped with the heavy jobs, and never pushed Dorian to talk about anything he wasn't ready for. Dorothy, Serena's mother, lived 20 minutes away and took Jovi on weekends when Dorian's work ran long. There was one other person worth knowing about even if she hadn't shown up yet. Renata Shaw was Serena's older cousin, sharp-eyed and protective in the way that sometimes curdled into possessiveness. She had strong opinions about who belonged in Dorian's life and in what capacity, and she had never warmed to Kira, whom she had described more than once as too close, too available, too conveniently placed. Nobody had challenged that directly. It was easier to let Renata be Renata. They were all in their own way, holding their breath, waiting for Dorian to find his way back to the living. None of them said so out loud. The call came at 5:30 while Dorian was washing sawdust off his hands at the kitchen sink. He had spent the day refinishing a hardwood floor in Bexley, and his back ached in the specific way it did after 8 hours of kneeling. Jovi was at Dorothy's for the night. She had a school project to finish, and Dorothy had offered to help. The house was quiet. Dorian had been planning to heat up leftovers, watch something forgettable on television, and let the day end without ceremony. His phone buzzed on the counter. Lionel. "Hey!" Dorian dried his hands. "What's up?" "You eaten yet?" "About to." "Hold off on that." Lionel's voice carried the particular casualness of someone who had rehearsed what they were about to say. "I got something for you. A client referral. Guy named Patterson owns a property out near Griggs Reservoir. Old river house needs a full interior overhaul. Structural work, custom cabinetry, the whole thing. He's particular about who he hires." Dorian leaned against the counter. And he asked for you specifically. Heard about the Caldwell job. But here's the thing, he's flying out tomorrow morning, so tonight's the only window. He wants to meet, look over some rough plans, talk numbers. "Tonight," Dorian said it flatly. "I know it's late notice." "Lionel, it's my—" He stopped. He almost never said it out loud. "It's not a great night." There was a pause on the other end. Brief, but there. "I know what night it is, Dee. I wouldn't call if it wasn't worth your time. This job would cover Jovi's school fees through spring. Maybe summer too if the cabinetry scope is what he's describing." Dorian was quiet for a moment. He looked at the window above the sink, at the dark settling in over the backyard. There was a photograph on the refrigerator, Jovi at 6, missing her 2 front teeth, grinning at the camera with both arms around Serena's neck. Serena was laughing, her head tilted back, eyes closed. He looked away. "Where does he want to meet?" Another pause, shorter this time. "Bell Harbor, down on Riverside." The name landed like a hand pressed flat against his chest. Bell Harbor, the restaurant on the river where he had taken Serena on their 3rd date, where he had proposed 7 years ago at a corner table by the window with a ring he had saved 11 months to afford, where they had gone back every anniversary until the last year when she was too tired to go anywhere that required dressing up. He had not been back since the funeral. "Dorian, I heard you." "You don't have to." "What time?" Lionel exhaled. 7:30. Asked for the reservation under Patterson." Dorian hung up and stood in the kitchen for a long moment. Then he went to the bedroom, changed his shirt, and ran a hand over his face in the bathroom mirror. He looked tired in the way that had become permanent not from the day's work, but from something that lived deeper than that. He picked up his keys. He told himself it was just a meeting, just a table in a restaurant he happened to have history with. Just business on a Tuesday night in October that happened to be his birthday. He almost believed it. Bell Harbor looked exactly the same. That was the thing about certain places. They didn't have the decency to change. Same warm lighting over the bar, same dark wood paneling along the walls, same smell of cedar and river air that came through whenever someone opened the side door. Dorian stood in the entrance for a moment, hands in his jacket pockets, letting his eyes adjust. The hostess smiled at him. "Reservation. Patterson," he said. She checked her screen, then looked up with a slightly different expression, not quite apologetic, not quite neutral. "Right this way." She led him toward the back of the restaurant, past the bar, past the 2 tops along the window. He knew where they were going before they arrived. He had known the moment he walked through the door and felt the layout of the room settle over him like something memorized. The corner table by the window, the one that looked out over the river. Kira Linton was sitting there alone. She was dressed simply, dark blouse, no jewelry except small gold earrings, and she had her hands on the table in the careful way of someone who had been rehearsing stillness. In front of her sat a small birthday cake with a single unlit candle. Beside it, a worn wooden box with a brass clasp. And beside that, a cream-colored envelope with his name written on the front, in handwriting that stopped his breath completely. Serena's handwriting. Dorian stood at the edge of the table and did not sit down. "There's no Patterson," he said. "No." Kira's voice was steady, but her eyes were not. "There isn't. Lionel set this up. We did it together." She didn't look away. "Dorian, I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But please just sit down. 5 minutes, that's all I'm asking." "You don't get to do this." His voice was low and even, which was worse than if he had raised it. "You don't get to bring me here to this table on this night and call it something it isn't. I'm not calling it anything. This is the table where I proposed to my wife." The words came out with a weight that silenced the space between them. "You know that. You were there when she told you about it, and you chose this table anyway." Kira opened her mouth, then closed it. Dorian pulled his jacket straight and turned around. He walked back through the restaurant the same way he had come in, steady, deliberate. A few people glanced up. He didn't see them. He reached the entrance, pushed through the inner door, and put his hand on the exterior handle. Behind him, across the length of the restaurant, he heard a small sound, a phone screen tapping, then a pause, then audio beginning to play. And then he heard her voice. Not a recording he had prepared himself for. Not the clipped, tired voice from the last months when speaking took effort. This was Serena from before, clear and warm and unhurried, the voice she used when she was being careful about something that mattered. "Dorian." His hand went rigid on the door handle. "If you're walking away right now, that means Kira did exactly what I asked her to do. And it means you're scared. Which means you're still you." The restaurant had gone very quiet around him, or maybe that was just the way sound worked when something reached all the way down to the place he'd spent 3 years protecting. He did not push the door open. He stood there with his back to the room, his hands still on the handle, and he breathed. Then slowly he turned around. He walked back to the table slowly, the way a man walks when he has made a decision he isn't entirely sure about yet. Kira had not moved. She sat quietly, the phone face down on the table. Now the audio stopped. She did not look relieved that he had turned around. She looked like she understood exactly how much it had cost him. Dorian pulled out the chair across from her and sat down. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The restaurant moved quietly around them, low conversations, the clink of glasses, a burst of soft laughter from somewhere near the bar. It all felt very far away. "This isn't a date," Kira said finally. "I need you to know that before anything else. That's not what this is." "Then what is it?" "It's a delivery." She placed her hand lightly on the wooden box but didn't open it. "Serena asked me to do this. Specifically, bring you here to this table on your 37th birthday. She was exact about the details." Dorian looked at the box, then at the envelope. "She planned this before she died, about 2 months before, when she still had enough energy to record things, write things." Kira's voice was careful but not fragile. "She made me promise. She said you would need 3 years first, that anything sooner would be too close and you wouldn't be ready to hear it." He was quiet for a moment. "What's in the box?" "3 things. A video she recorded for you, a set of birthday cards, one for each of the next several years already written. A list she titled, 'Things You Have to Do So Jovi Gets to See Her Father Actually Living.'" Kira paused. "And at the very bottom, tucked beneath the cards, there's a letter. She wrote it for me. She asked me not to read it myself until after I gave you yours." Something moved across Dorian's face that he didn't try to hide and couldn't have anyway. "I'm not going to make you open it tonight," Kira said. "I'm not going to make you do anything. I promised Serena I would get you here and put this in front of you. That part's done. The rest is yours." Dorian looked at the envelope with his name on it for a long moment. Then he looked at Kira, really looked at her, maybe for the first time since Serena's funeral. She had changed in small ways. There were tired lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. She held herself differently, like someone who had been carrying something heavy for so long they had forgotten what it felt like to set it down. "How long have you had this?" he asked. 3 years and 2 months. "You never said anything." She asked me not to, not until tonight. Kira glanced down at the table. "I almost called you a dozen times. Holidays were hard. Jovi's birthday last spring was—" She stopped. "I almost broke the promise more than once." "Why didn't you?" She met his eyes. "Because Serena trusted me with it, and she didn't trust easily." A beat. "You know that better than anyone." Dorian reached out and touched the edge of the wooden box. Just the edge with 2 fingers, the way he touched a piece of timber he wasn't sure about yet. He didn't open it, but he didn't pull his hand back either. "She knew I'd walk out," he said quietly. It wasn't a question. "She said—" Kira's voice softened just slightly. "She said you'd walk out fast, but you wouldn't go far. She said you never could leave a thing unfinished." Dorian said nothing. But for the first time since he had walked through the door, he sat back in his chair. Kira did not push him to open the box. They sat in a silence that was not entirely uncomfortable, the kind that forms between 2 people who have both been living inside the same grief from different angles. Dorian kept his hand near the wooden box but did not lift the clasp. The birthday cake sat between them with its single unlit candle slightly lopsided, the frosting uneven in the way of something made by someone who cared more about the gesture than the result. He noticed it properly for the first time. "You didn't make this," he said. Kira looked at the cake. The corner of her mouth moved. "No. The frosting looks like Jovi's handwriting." "That's because she did it." Kira folded her hands on the table. "She asked me about a week ago if I was going to see you on your birthday. I didn't tell her about any of this, just said I might be stopping by. She asked if she could send something." Kira paused. She'd been planning it for a while, apparently. She had the decorations in a bag in her closet. Dorian stared at the cake. "She didn't tell you," Kira said gently. "She was afraid it would make you sad." The words settled over him slowly, the way cold does not all at once, but finding its way in through every small gap. His daughter had wanted to celebrate his birthday, had planned for it, prepared for it, kept it hidden in her closet in a bag, and had said nothing because she had learned that her father's happiness and her father's grief lived in the same rooms, and she didn't know how to open one without disturbing the other. Kira stood quietly and said something brief to one of the musicians near the small corner stage, a 3-piece setup that had been playing low background music all evening. The musician nodded. A few seconds later, the song changed. Dorian recognized it before the first bar was finished. It was the song he had sung to Serena on the night he proposed, quietly, badly, with no musical ability whatsoever, just because she had once mentioned it was her favorite, and he had wanted to do something that couldn't be bought. He had never told anyone that story. Only Serena knew. And Serena had told Kira. He pressed his thumb and forefinger against the bridge of his nose and did not speak for a moment. "Open the video," Kira said softly. "You don't have to watch the rest tonight, just the video." He opened the box. Inside, wrapped in a piece of cloth, was a small USB drive with a strip of tape across it. In Serena's handwriting, "Play this one first." Kira had a small laptop in her bag, part of the plan she had prepared carefully down to every detail. She set it on the table without a word and plugged in the drive. She turned the screen toward him and then looked away toward the window and the dark water beyond it, giving him the only privacy available in a public place. Serena appeared on the screen. She was sitting in their bedroom. He recognized the quilt on the bed behind her, the lamp on the nightstand. She looked tired in a way that was hard to see, but her eyes were clear and she was almost smiling. "Hey you," she said. "If you're watching this, you actually stayed. I'm proud of you for that." Dorian's jaw tightened. "I'm not going to say a lot. You hate when people say a lot." A small pause. "Loving me doesn't mean your life stops, Dorian. I never asked you for that. I wouldn't." She looked directly into the camera. "Kira is there because I trust her more than almost anyone I've ever known. If you can laugh with her someday, don't you dare feel guilty about it. You hear me? Don't you dare." The video ended. Dorian sat very still. Across the table, Kira was still looking at the window. Her shoulders were not quite steady. Neither were his. For the first time in 3 years, something behind his eyes gave way quietly without warning, the way a dam goes not from a single blow, but from the slow accumulation of everything it has been holding back. He didn't make a sound. He just sat there with the laptop screen gone dark and let it happen. The days after Bell Harbor were strange ones. Dorian went back to work. He showed up on time, measured twice, cut once, said the right things to his clients. From the outside, nothing had changed. But inside, something had shifted in a way he couldn't quite name. Like a door that had been sealed for years was now just slightly ajar, letting in a draft he didn't know how to close off again. He called Kira on a Thursday evening 9 days after the restaurant. It started as a practical call. He wanted to thank her properly, he said, without a table between them and a room full of strangers. It turned into an hour-long conversation about Jovi's school, a leaking pipe Kira had been ignoring in her bathroom, the time Serena had attempted to make jollof rice for Christmas and set off the smoke detector twice. They laughed. It surprised both of them. After that, Kira started appearing more regularly at the edges of things. She came to Dorothy's on a Sunday when Dorian was picking up Jovi and stayed for dinner. She texted him once about a hardware store sale she had driven past. Small things, careful things, the kind of contact that could be explained away as friendship, as family-adjacent obligation, as nothing more than two people who shared a loss and were finding their way through it. But Renata Shaw noticed. When word reached her that Kira and Dorian had met privately at Bell Harbor on his birthday, Renata did not ask questions. She drew conclusions and stated them out loud. At a family gathering at Dorothy's house 3 weeks after the restaurant, Renata said within clear earshot of several people that Kira had always had a way of positioning herself that some people grieved and some people waited, and that it was a particular kind of disrespect to move into a space before it had even fully cooled. Kira heard it. She didn't respond. She excused herself to the kitchen and stood at the sink for a long time with the water running. Dorian heard it too. He said nothing in the moment, not because he agreed, but because he was caught off guard by the force of his own reaction, which was angrier than he expected, and more protective than he was prepared to explain. The damage was already spreading. Jovi had been in the hallway when Renata spoke. That night, getting ready for bed, she asked Dorian in a very small voice whether it was bad that she liked Kira. Dorian crouched down to her level. Why would it be bad? Jovi picked at the hem of her sleeve. Because of Mommy. He didn't have a good answer ready. He said it wasn't bad. He said Mommy would want her to like people who were kind to her. Jovi nodded in the way children nod when they are accepting an answer they aren't fully convinced by. After she was asleep, Dorian sat at the kitchen table and looked at the wooden box on the counter. He had not opened the birthday cards yet. He had not read the list. He told himself he was taking things slowly. But the truth, which he was only beginning to admit to himself, was that he was still afraid, not of loving someone new, but of what it would mean about him if he did. The memorial gathering was Dorothy's idea. She held it every year on the Saturday closest to the date Serena had been admitted to the hospital for the last time, not the death date, which Dorothy said was too final, but the last day Serena had walked out of her own house under her own power. It was a small thing, immediate family, a few close friends, food on the table, photographs on the mantle. A way of saying her name out loud in a room full of people who missed her. This year, Dorian brought Jovi. Kira came separately, arriving a little after 6 with a dish she had made one of Serena's recipes, sweet potato and black-eyed peas, the one Serena had made every Thanksgiving without variation. Dorothy hugged her at the door for a long time. For the first hour, everything was quiet and warm in the way those gatherings sometimes managed to be, grief held gently shared rather than carried alone. Dorian stayed near Jovi. Kira helped Dorothy in the kitchen. Lionel told a story about Serena that made everyone laugh and then go quiet in that particular sequence that meant the laughter had landed exactly right. Then Renata arrived late. She came in with her coat still on, and that particular energy of someone who had been building towards something on the drive over. The comments started small. A remark about how often Kira seemed to be around lately. A question posed to no one in particular about whether it was appropriate to bring Serena's recipes to Serena's memorial. a reference to how some people had a talent for making themselves indispensable at exactly the right moments. Kira kept her back mostly to the room, finishing the dishes. Her movements were steady, but her neck had gone rigid. Dorian set down his glass. He crossed the room in a way that was unhurried but direct, and when he spoke, it was quietly enough that only the people nearby could hear, which was worse in some ways than raising his voice. "Renata," he said, "that's enough." Renata looked at him with an expression that suggested she had been expecting this. "I'm just saying what people are thinking, Dorian." "You're not." His voice was even. "You're saying what you're thinking, and you're saying it in Serena's mother's house at Serena's memorial, and I'm asking you to stop." Renata looked between Dorian and Kira for a long moment. Then she picked up her coat and left without finishing her plate. The gathering recovered slowly, but something had shifted. Dorian could feel it in the way people moved around him carefully for the rest of the evening, and in the way Kira said a quiet goodbye to Dorothy earlier than expected, and did not meet his eyes on the way out. He found her at her car. "You didn't have to do that," she said. She wasn't angry. She sounded tired. "I know. It's going to make things worse. People will talk more, not less." "Let them." Kira looked at him for a moment. Something in her expression was close to breaking and close to resolving at the same time. Then she shook her head slowly. "I think I need to step back for a while, from all of this." She opened her car door. "I don't want to be the reason Jovi hears things she shouldn't have to hear. I don't want to be the reason this family gets complicated." "Kira, I'm going to give you back the rest of Serena's things. The cards, the list, they're yours. They were always yours." She got into the car. "I did what I promised her I'd do. That's enough." She drove away. Dorian stood in the cold outside Dorothy's house and did not move for a long time. Inside, he could hear Jovi laughing at something Lionel had said. He drove home. The wooden box was on the kitchen counter where he had left it. The birthday card still unread, the list still folded. He sat down at the table and did not turn on the lights. He had defended Kira in front of Serena's family, and then he had watched her leave anyway. And now the house was quiet in the way it had been quiet for 3 years, and he understood for the first time the difference between surviving a loss and choosing to stay inside it. He opened the box that night, not because he was ready, because he had run out of reasons not to. The birthday cards were bundled together with a piece of twine, each envelope numbered on the front in Serena's handwriting. Year 1, Year 2, Year 3. He had already passed through all 3 without opening a single one. He started with Year 1 and read straight through to Year 3 without stopping. They were not dramatic. That was the thing that undid him, how ordinary they were. Year 1 was short. "I know this one is hard. Eat something real today, not cereal, real food." Year 2 reminded him to take Jovi to see the cherry blossoms at Goodale Park because Serena had always meant to take her and never gotten around to it. Year 3 began, "If you're reading this one, you made it further than I was afraid you might. I mean that gently. You know what I mean." He read Year 3 twice. In the middle of the card, Serena had written about Kira. Not as instruction, not as arrangement, just as observation, the way Serena always communicated the things she knew most clearly. She wrote that Kira was the kind of person who gave everything to the people she loved and had never once in her life allowed herself to be on the receiving end of that. She wrote that Kira had sat beside her bed on the worst nights and never once made it about herself. She wrote, "I'm not picking anyone for you, Dorian. I wouldn't do that. But if 2 people who are both hurting ever manage to actually see each other, don't let pride or fear or what anybody else thinks be the reason they don't." Dorian set the card down on the table. He sat in the dark kitchen for a long time without moving. The refrigerator hummed. A car passed outside. Somewhere in the house, the old radiator ticked. He had spent 3 years treating his grief like a form of loyalty, as though staying inside the loss was the same as honoring Serena, as though moving in any direction toward anything would constitute a kind of betrayal. He had built that logic carefully and lived inside it and called it love. But Serena had seen it coming. She had written around it gently and precisely 2 months before she died. and she had trusted Kira to deliver the words at the exact moment he was finally still enough to hear them. He heard Jovi's door open down the hall. She padded into the kitchen in her socks, saw him sitting at the table in the dark, and stopped. "Dad." "Hey, Bug." He reached over and turned on the small counter lamp. "Couldn't sleep." She got her water and then climbed into the chair beside him without asking. She leaned against his arm the way she had since she was small. After a moment, she said very quietly, "I really like Kira, Dad. I just wanted you to know that. You don't have to do anything about it, I just wanted to say it." Dorian put his arm around her. "Mom wouldn't be sad about it," Jovi added. "I don't think she would." He pressed his cheek against the top of her head and closed his eyes. "No," he said quietly. "I don't think she would either." They sat there together in the small circle of lamplight, a father and his daughter, both of them finally saying out loud the thing they had been carrying alone. Kira was pulling a suitcase from her closet when the knock came. She had booked a train to her sister's place in Pittsburgh. Nothing permanent, just a week or two away from Columbus, away from Dorothy's kitchen and Renata's voice, and the particular weight of being in a city where every block held some memory of Serena. She needed to breathe air that didn't ask anything of her. The knock came again. She set the suitcase on the bed and went to the door. Dorian was standing in the hallway in his work jacket, the one he wore when he hadn't planned to go anywhere but had gone anyway. He was not carrying flowers. He was not carrying anything except a single cream-colored envelope, which he held out to her without preamble. "This one's yours," he said. "Serena wrote it for you. It was at the bottom of the box. I should have given it to you sooner." Kira looked at the envelope. Her name was on the front in Serena's handwriting, not a number, not Dorian's name, just Kira. She took it and stepped back from the door. He came in. She stood by the window and opened it slowly. Dorian stayed near the door, giving her the room to read it without being watched. He looked at the suitcase on the bed but said nothing about it. Kira read the letter once. Then she stood very still for a moment and then she read it again. Serena had written, "I know you, Kay. I know exactly what you're doing right now. You're making yourself smaller so nobody can accuse you of wanting too much. You've been doing that your whole life, and I have never once managed to talk you out of it. So I'm trying one more time from wherever I am. You are not taking anything from me. You never could. If you love them, and I think you already do, even if you won't say it yet, then love them. That's not betrayal. That's you finally letting someone take care of you for once. Don't you dare run from that." Kira's hand came up to her mouth. She stood there by the window with the letter pressed against her chest and cried in the quiet, contained way of someone who has been holding it together for a very long time. Not falling apart, just finally carefully setting something down. Dorian crossed the room and sat on the edge of the chair near the window. He didn't reach for her. He just stayed close. After a while, she lowered her hand and looked at him. Her eyes were red, but her voice was steady. "I love Jovi," she said, "and I love being around you. I've been terrified of both of those things for a long time." "I know. I don't want to replace anything. I wouldn't even know how." "You couldn't," he said. "That's not how any of this works. Serena doesn't get replaced, she just—" He paused, finding the right words the way he found the right cut in a piece of wood by going slowly and trusting his hands. "She stays where she is, and there's still room. That's what I kept getting wrong. I thought it was one or the other." Kira folded the letter along its original creases and held it carefully. "I'm supposed to be on a train tomorrow," she said. "I know, I saw the suitcase." "I still might go. I think I need a few days." "Okay," she looked at him. "That's it, okay? You've been carrying this for 3 years without being asked," he said. "You can have a few days." Something in her expression shifted, not dramatically, just a quiet settling like a room after the windows have been opened. She nodded once. He stood up to leave. At the door, he stopped and turned back. "When you get home," he said, "Jovi wants to teach you how she makes her mother's cornbread. She's been practicing." Kira laughed, a small, real laugh, the kind that comes before the tears are fully dry. "Tell her I'll bring the butter," she said. The following October, Dorian turned 38. He did not find out about the party until he pulled into his own driveway and saw Lionel's truck parked out front next to Dorothy's sedan and a car he recognized as belonging to Marcus, his oldest friend from the neighborhood. String lights had been strung along the back fence, the kind Jovi had been asking him to put up since summer, claiming they would make the yard look like a real place. He had kept forgetting to buy them. Apparently, she had stopped waiting for him to remember. He sat in his truck for a moment with the engine off, looking at the warm light coming through the side gate. Then he got out. The backyard was small, but it had been arranged with care. Folding tables covered with cloth, food laid out the way Dorothy did it when she meant to feed people properly. A speaker in the corner playing the kind of music that asked nothing of anyone. Jovi came running the moment she heard the gate, threw her arms around his waist and said, "Surprise!" in a voice that suggested she had been waiting to say it for approximately 2 weeks. Dorothy was at the food table. Lionel raised a cup in his direction. Marcus said something that made the group near the fence laugh. It was ordinary in every way that mattered. Then Dorian saw Kira. She was standing near the back of the yard with a cake in her hands, homemade, visibly imperfect, leaning slightly to the left and loaded with candles. She had come back from Pittsburgh after 4 days. She had shown up at Dorothy's the following Sunday and made Serena's cornbread recipe alongside Jovi, getting most of it right on the second attempt. Since then, she had been present in the way that felt natural rather than arranged. Sunday dinners, school pickups when Dorian ran late, evenings on the porch when Jovi was asleep and the night was quiet enough to talk. They had not rushed anything. There was nothing to rush. In the corner of the yard, on the small table beside the flowers Dorothy had brought there, was a photograph of Serena. Not placed there as an absence, but as a presence. The way you keep a photograph of someone you love because you want them in the room. Jovi had chosen the photo herself. In it, Serena was laughing at something off camera, her head tilted back completely unself-conscious. It was the best photograph anyone had ever taken of her. Dorian walked over to Kira, took the cake carefully from her hands before the candles could tilt it further, and set it on the nearest table. He reached into the front pocket of his jacket and took out a small object he had been carrying for 3 weeks, waiting for a moment that felt right rather than staged. It was a ring. Wooden, made from a piece of walnut he had set aside from a job 2 years ago because the grain was too good to use on a cabinet. He had turned it on his lathe on a series of quiet evenings, slowly without telling anyone. Kira looked at it in his hand and went very still. "I'm not in a hurry," he said. "And I'm not asking you to replace anything or become anything other than what you already are. I'm just asking if you want to keep showing up. For Jovi. For this." He paused. "For me." Kira looked at the ring for a long moment. Then she looked at him. "Yes," she said, simply without hesitation. Jovi, who had been watching from 3 feet away with unconvincing casualness, let out a sound somewhere between a cheer and a sob and launched herself at both of them simultaneously. Lionel started clapping. Dorothy pressed her hand over her heart. Dorian slid the ring onto Kira's finger. It fit. Across the yard in the photograph on the flower table, Serena was still laughing, head back, eyes closed, entirely at ease. Some things, it turned out, did not need to end in order to continue. There's something this story keeps coming back to. The idea that honoring the people we've lost doesn't mean staying frozen in the place where we last held them. Sometimes the most faithful thing we can do is let their love keep moving through us, forward into the lives of the people still here. Dorian didn't stop loving Serena. He just finally understood that she had never asked him to stop living. If that landed with you, if you've ever been afraid that moving on meant letting go, you're not alone. Stories like this one are why this channel exists. Subscribe if you haven't already and come back next time. We'll have another one waiting for you.